Have you ever been told that you were the disappointment of the family, that your dreams were nothing but wasted time, and your presence a burden? Noelle Walker was given a $100 check and a folded job fair brochure and told you don't belong here anymore. 2 days later, the girl they erased from the family photo became the woman holding a $50 million lottery ticket in a motel room no one knew she was in. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's about silence, about what it means to walk away, not to prove them wrong, but to finally stop asking them to see you. Because sometimes the loudest victory is the one that doesn't need to be spoken at all. She left the same way she came, only this time she chose the door. It happened on a Wednesday. The house smelled like furniture polish and lemon clean in that sterile, unlived in way. Noelle stood at the kitchen counter, still wearing her bookstore apron, the name tag slightly crooked. Her mother sat at the table, hands folded neatly, staring into a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Across from her, her father leaned on one elbow, flipping through the mail like it was any other day. The envelope was already on the table. "We've talked about this, Noelle," her mother said gently, as if rehearsing lines from a script. "You need a push. We think this is best for everyone." Inside the envelope was a $100 check, a brochure for a local job fair, and a handwritten note that read, "You'll thank us someday. We still love you." It wasn't the words that stung. It was how calmly they said them. How the tea sat untouched between them, steamless. How her father never lifted his eyes. How her mother wiped the counter as Noelle stood frozen still, holding her breath like a child being scolded. "We just can't keep supporting you if you won't help yourself," her father added almost kindly. "You're 26, her mother said. "You have to figure things out." There was no yelling, no final straw, just a quiet folding of their hope and a closing of the door behind it. Noelle didn't argue. She didn't cry. She walked to her room, packed a duffel bag, took the half-finished tea from the counter, still warm from her hands, not theirs, and stepped out into the winter air without looking back. Outside, snowflakes fell slowly, like the world was trying to soften the blow. Inside, no one came to the window. That was the part that stayed with her. Not the money, not the silence, but the fact that when she left, truly left, no one even turned to watch her go. Noelle Walker never wanted to be famous. She just wanted to be seen. There was a time long before disappointment settled into the seams of her parents' voices when her mother would clap wildly at her living room performances. Noelle would sing made-up songs about clouds, and Broccoli wear pillowcases as capes and declare herself Queen of Tuesday. Her mother would laugh until she cried, calling her my little poet in pajamas. But somewhere between spelling bees and report cards, the applause stopped. Her sister Eliza had become the obvious favorite. She was a straight A student varsity tennis player, future MBA candidate before she could even drive. Eliza spoke in plans. Noelle spoke in questions. By middle school, Noelle had learned to stay quiet during dinner, to swallow stories of poems she wrote in spiral notebooks, or the character she invented named Marigold, who lived in a library attic. Whenever she tried to share, her father would say, "You spend too much time in your head without even looking up from the newspaper." The house didn't have space for dreams that didn't translate into scholarships. At 16, Noelle applied to a summer creative writing camp in Vermont. She printed the brochure herself, left it on the kitchen counter with hope tucked underneath like a paperweight. A week later, her mother handed it back with a sticky note on top: "We're not wasting money on things that don't go on college applications." That night, Noelle didn't eat dinner. She spent it on the roof, instead watching stars flicker behind clouds and wondering how people could feel so lonely in a house full of light. Even in family photos, she faded. Her smiles were delayed, her posture hesitant. Always a step behind Eliza, always half blocked by someone's shoulder. By 19, she had tried college, dropped out after one semester, worked a few odd jobs, eventually found comfort in Holloway's bookshop, a dusty corner of town no one cared much about, which suited her fine. Books didn't interrupt. They didn't ask why she was still figuring things out. Her mother visited once, months into the job, looked around like it smelled of wasted potential. "You could be so much more," she said barely above a whisper. Noelle smiled. Not because she agreed, but because she had stopped arguing long ago. What her family called giving up, she called breathing. She had a notebook in her backpack filled with stories she'd never read aloud. A children's book idea about a girl who planted wishes in the ground and waited for them to bloom. A YouTube channel with 92 subscribers, mostly strangers, who commented kind things. And a folder on her laptop named Not Everything Broken Needs Fixing. They called them hobbies. She called them survival. By 26, Noelle had mastered the art of being small, of folding herself in corners, of smiling without taking up space. So when her parents told her it was time to go, she didn't flinch. What cut deepest wasn't the decision, it was how long they'd been ready to make it. 2 days after her parents told her she didn't belong, Noelle sat in a drafty Greyhound station in New Haven eating cup noodles with a plastic spoon that kept snapping at the handle. Her coat was too thin, her boots damp from slush. Her duffel bag held everything she owned: 2 sweaters, 3 pairs of socks, a water-stained paperback, and an envelope containing her final bookstore paycheck, 162,126 after taxes. She hadn't cried since the night she left. Not when the motel shower sputtered rust. Not when the vending machine swallowed her only $5 bill. Not even when a stranger looked straight through her like fogged glass. But that morning, something broke not loudly, but precisely, in the form of a lottery ticket. It was nothing. A throwaway purchase. She'd picked it up the day before at a gas station convenience store, more out of habit than hope. It was wedged between a pack of gum and a bottle of off-brand aspirin. Pick your numbers, the teenage clerk had said, bored not even looking at her. Noelle had shrugged. You choose? She didn't even know what the jackpot was. Now hunched over a motel room table with a flickering light and a coffee stain shaped like Maine Noelle, stared at the television screen. Powerball winner won ticket, $50 million, sold in Middlesex County. She blinked, reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the crumpled slip. She read the numbers once, then again, then out loud. They matched, every single one. She didn't scream, didn't dance, didn't call anyone because there was no one to call. Her stomach dropped, her body went cold, then hot, then cold again. The world didn't tilt. It snapped. She looked around the room, the stained wallpaper, the broken TV remote, the thrift store jeans drying on the heater, and felt absolutely nothing. No joy, no justice, just static. It wasn't the kind of news that made her feel powerful. It made her feel exposed. Like a camera had been secretly filming her grief, and now the whole world had tuned in. She slept with the ticket inside a plastic sandwich bag tucked under her pillow. She didn't leave the room for 48 hours. She Googled how to claim anonymously. She Googled lottery curse and how to disappear. She even Googled, what if I don't want it? Because the truth was, this didn't feel like a reward. It felt like a test. On the third morning, she walked 6 blocks in freezing wind to a laundromat, just to use the change machine and breathe air that didn't smell like doubt. That night, she sat with a pen in her hand for hours, unable to sign the back of the ticket. It was surreal, really, that after a lifetime of being invisible, now millions of eyes might want to know her name. The same people who ignored her might claim to love her. The family who dismissed her might invite her back in, not because they missed her, but because they missed what she now held. She wondered what her parents would say. She pictured their kitchen, that cold cup of tea, the envelope on the table. Would they ask for forgiveness, or just ask for a piece? 5 days later, she finally walked into the lottery office. She wore sunglasses and a secondhand blazer, gave a P.O. box instead of an address, declined the press photo, signed the forms with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. When the woman behind the counter smiled and said, "Congratulations," Noelle just nodded the same way you do when someone tells you the weather looks nice, even if you haven't stepped outside in days. She walked out through the back exit. No cameras, no applause, just a girl with too much money and no idea what to do with it. Noelle didn't spend the money, not right away, not even soon. For the first few weeks, the lottery winnings sat untouched in a trust account registered under a name that wasn't legally hers. She had hired a lawyer through a burner phone, paid in cash, met in a parking lot outside a strip mall. No eye contact, no handshakes. The lawyer called her Miss Walker only once. She asked him not to say it again. She moved constantly, from motels with flickering hallway lights to rentals where the water pressure moaned like something alive. Always small towns, always near the edge of somewhere no one cared to map. She changed her hair. Sometimes short, sometimes dyed, sometimes hidden under a knit cap. But the thing that disguised her most was silence. She didn't speak unless she had to, didn't stay long enough to be remembered. When asked for her name, she rotated through old book characters. Emma Lila Clare. Noelle was a ghost now, not dead, but untraceable. In the beginning, she kept expecting to feel free. Instead, she felt erased. On a foggy Tuesday morning, in a sleepy beach town off the coast of Maine, she found a public library that smelled like salt and dust. The floorboards creaked in apology with every step, and the librarian didn't ask questions. Noelle filled out a card under the name June Harmon. It felt soft on her tongue, harmless. The first book she checked out was The Bell Jar. She didn't finish it. The second was a blank journal. She didn't intend to write. She just missed the sound of pages turning. But 3 days later, huddled inside a rented attic studio above a bait shop, she picked up a pen and wrote one line. Some disappear to be found. Others disappear because no one ever looked. It startled her. Not because it was profound, but because it came so easily. Words had once been a part of her as natural as breath. Now they returned like an old friend standing at the front door, unsure if they were still welcome. The next day she wrote again. And again. Sometimes whole pages, sometimes just phrases. She didn't write to share. She wrote to remember what her voice sounded like without echoing anyone else's expectations. She got into a routine, mornings black coffee and a walk along the empty harbor. Afternoons reading, journaling, buying groceries she never finished. Evenings listening to gulls' foghorns and her own heartbeat. At night she left the window cracked open just enough to hear the ocean even in the cold. Something about its rhythm, constant and different, calmed her. But she wasn't healed. Not yet. There were still moments when shame climbed her spine like a chill. She'd pass a mother and daughter on the sidewalk and wonder what it would feel like to be wanted again. She'd see families laughing over brunch and feel like an intruder even from across the street. She still checked her parents' Facebook pages every few days as if one post might whisper, "We miss you." But the silence remained. No messages, no questions, no regret. She had vanished, and they had adjusted. One evening, she sat on the wooden porch of her rental with a mug of chamomile tea now cold, a notebook balanced on her knee. The sky was turning lavender that half-light hour where everything softens. She wrote, "I thought disappearing would feel like revenge, but it mostly feels like peace, dressed in loneliness." She stared at the words for a long time. They didn't sting, but they didn't set her free either. In the following weeks, she began to sketch out a story part fiction, part memory. A girl named Lydia, a family that loved rules more than people, a dream that refused to die quietly. It wasn't a novel yet. Maybe it never would be. But it was something to wake up for, something to finish. She kept imagining different versions of herself. A version where she walked back into her parents' house, dropped a check on the kitchen table, and walked away without a word. A version where she donated every penny to a literacy fund and disappeared off the grid for good. A version where she published her book under a pseudonym and became a quiet success no one in her family would ever know about. She didn't know which version would win. All she knew was she wasn't who she used to be. And maybe that was enough for now. She made a rule never stay more than 3 weeks in the same place. But as her third week in the beach town passed, she didn't pack. Not yet. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't running from anything. She was waiting to see who she might become if no one else was watching. It was Eliza who invited her. Not a call, just a text short, stiff, like something typed in a rush. Mom's birthday dinner, Sunday at 6, at the house. If you're free, no, we'd love to see you. No, hope you're doing okay. Noelle stared at it for almost an hour. She hadn't spoken to them in 3 months, hadn't posted anything, hadn't replied to anything. She knew Eliza didn't send the message because she missed her. She sent it because inviting the entire family and leaving out the lost daughter might have looked bad. Optics, not emotion. Still, Noelle typed 2 words, "I'll come." She arrived 5 minutes early. The house looked smaller now, not physically but emotionally, like a place that had once felt vast had finally revealed its true size. Noelle wore a navy blue dress that didn't try to impress. Her coat was simple, no label. She carried no purse, just a small envelope in her hand, cream-colored, unmarked, weightless, and heavy all at once. Her mother opened the door, smiled like she'd just seen a neighbor she didn't particularly like. "Oh, Noelle, you came." Her father, seated on the couch, didn't stand. He nodded once, then looked back at the TV. In the kitchen, Eliza was already pouring wine. Her laughter bounced off the cabinets as she told some story about her new condo. Her husband, Greg, barely glanced up when Noelle stepped in. "Wow, look who's alive," Eliza said. "Thought you'd run off to join a cult or something." Noelle smiled politely. "I considered it, but their uniforms were ugly." No one laughed. She was given the seat at the end of the table near the swinging kitchen door, the seat they always gave to boyfriends who didn't last, or cousins who talked too much. Her mother placed a napkin in front of her like she was doing charity. "We weren't sure you'd show her. Father said slicing roast beef." Well, she's always been sensitive about family things, her mother added. Noelle said nothing, just buttered her roll and listened. They talked over her, around her, never to her. Eliza had a new promotion. Greg was planning a golf trip. Her parents were redoing the backyard. Not once did anyone ask where she had been. Not once did they ask if she was okay. It was like she had returned not as Noelle, but as a placeholder, a silhouette of a daughter. After dessert was served the usual store-bought cake with "Happy Birthday, Mom" in red cursive. Noelle reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the envelope. She placed it gently in the center of the table between the salt shaker and the centerpiece of artificial roses. "Before I go," she said, her voice calm, "I want to leave this." Everyone paused. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Her father set down his fork. "What is it?" her mother asked. Noelle didn't answer directly. "It's a gift, no strings attached. But before you open it, I want to ask one thing." She stood slowly steady. "Would you still love me if I had nothing? Would you let me sleep on the couch if I came home with empty hands? Would you tell your friends I was your daughter? If I worked at a bookstore and lived in borrowed rooms?" Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. Eliza blinked. Greg cleared his throat. Her father looked confused. Her mother tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand a language she had once spoken but forgotten. Noelle met each of their eyes gently but unflinching. "What's inside that envelope? It shouldn't change how you see me, because if it does, then maybe it's not me you love. But what I can give you," she stepped back from the table, "you don't have to open it. I won't ask again. I just needed to say that." Then she picked up her coat, buttoned it slowly, and walked toward the front door. No one followed her. No one asked her to stay. Outside, the wind curled around her like a scarf. Her breath came out in short white clouds. The porch light flickered behind her. She looked back once, not at the house. At the window, the same window they hadn't looked out from the day she left. It was still dark, still closed, and for the first time that didn't hurt. Noelle didn't check her phone for 2 days. She didn't need to. She already knew what would happen. They would open the envelope, see the cashier's check, $1 million divided 3 ways. No name, no note. Just value as cold and clean as a spreadsheet. There might be a moment of shock, maybe even guilt, but it would pass. They would cash it. They always cashed what they were given. Noelle didn't leave the dinner to make a statement. She left because she had finally learned that being seen should never require proving your worth. She moved again, not out of fear this time, but because she could. a small coastal town with no traffic lights and too many seagulls. She rented a white cottage with a porch that faced east and windows that fogged in the morning. The kind of house people drove past without noticing, which suited her just fine. She brought only what she loved: 3 notebooks, a secondhand kettle, and one chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Poet." She bought fresh bread on Thursdays, walked barefoot in her backyard when it rained, volunteered once a week at the local literacy center, reading to children who didn't yet know how rare their curiosity was. Most mornings she brewed tea and let it go cold beside her laptop. It became a ritual, the steam rising, then disappearing. The silence that followed. She didn't rush anymore. She didn't write for likes or approval or proof. She wrote because the words still lived in her, and now they had space to breathe. One morning, she opened a blank document and typed Chapter 1, the day she stopped being a daughter. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about family. It was about a girl who chose not to disappear quietly, who realized she could leave without bitterness and still not look back. She didn't know if anyone would ever read it, but she wrote it anyway. Sometimes she thought about her parents, not with rage, not with longing, just softly, like remembering a house you once lived in and now drive by without slowing down. Sometimes she imagined them opening the check again, wondering why she had sent it. She hoped they never figured it out, because if they did, it would mean they finally understood, and she wasn't sure she wanted that from them anymore. One afternoon, rain tapped gently on the roof. She sat by the window with a book in her lap and a mug of chamomile untouched beside her. Outside, children chased each other through puddles. A dog barked at the wind. Somewhere, a neighbor laughed. Inside, it was quiet, peaceful. Noelle leaned back, closed her eyes for a moment, and exhaled. She remembered the last time she'd left that house, how no one had come to the window to watch her go. This time, there was no window, no one watching, and it was enough. Sometimes we leave not because they let us go, but because we finally choose to stay with ourselves. It arrived on a Tuesday. Noelle almost threw it away with the rest of the mail grocery flyers, a catalog she never signed up for, and a pre-approved credit card offer addressed to current resident. But the handwriting stopped her. Curved, deliberate, familiar in a way she didn't want to admit. She sat on the porch steps, the afternoon sun warm on her ankles, and opened the envelope with careful fingers. There was no return address, just a single sheet of lined paper. No greeting, no name. I don't know if this makes things better. I don't know if it should. But I wanted to tell you that I read it. Your book. Every word felt like breathing through someone else's lungs. I didn't know you were in so much pain. I didn't know how small we made you feel. We used to talk about how quiet you were. I think now maybe we just never learned how to listen. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No signature. Noelle folded the letter in half and placed it under her tea mug, still warm this time. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She just sat there, the paper growing damp from the condensation. There was a version of her, maybe even last year, that would have begged for this moment, clutched it like a trophy, spun it into an invitation home. But the version of her who sat on that porch knew something softer. That some apologies come too late to fix anything, but right on time to let you go in peace. If you've ever felt like the quiet one in your family, the invisible one, the one who has never really heard the story, is for you. Leave a comment if Noelle's journey reminded you of your own. And if you're still learning how to choose peace over proving yourself, hit like, subscribe, and stay for the next story. You're not alone here.